I am live. This is DarkSkinTico, and this podcast is going to be about echo chamber. Something I found interesting about the whole entire thing with echo chambers is how what people perception of an echo chamber is tends to be way different than what they claim it to be for the most part. And typically, what I mean by that is there's a lot of people that'll say, well, your live streams are echo chambers, Tika. I go, well, if you actually paid attention to the live stream, you realize that most of us started off on opposite sides of the argument or opposite sides of the spectrum, which means that it's not an echo chamber. And the sad part about that, I picked the people on purpose because the people I pick in my live streams, I pick them on purpose for the fact that A, they're not going to be so agreeable, and B, they're not going to try to defend somebody. And that's typically how it works. Like I pick people who are not going to sit here and wholeheartedly go in and defend people. I want them to be outspoken and opinionated for the most part. It's typically how I pick the people that I actually go with and into live streams with. And another thing about the live streams that I actually do is I pick people that tend to be disagreeable for the most part. You at least have to be somewhat highly disagreeable with me for me to actually pick you for a live stream because it doesn't work out too well if you're all agreeable. And the irony to it, the things that I've always found that the reason why my live streams work out so well and we're not all because I've noticed here's how it usually works. All the live streams where everybody's in agreement and it's actually an echo chamber, more people view those live streams than people when everybody's disagreeable for the most part. And that's typically how it works. Because I guess it works easier and people don't have to think as much when everybody's agreeable and everybody's going along with the flow versus when various people disagree within your live stream, which is actually pretty funny. And on top of that, if you ever notice in a lot of the echo chambery live streams is not only do a lot of people agree, but a lot of people will defend the same stance or defend people for the most part. Whereas if you actually watch my live streams with a bunch of people, we don't really defend anybody. I always say, speak your mind, speak up. I don't really care. Be outspoken in my live streams for the most part. Say what you got. Say what you got to say. Say what's on your mind. Shit like that. It doesn't matter who gets mad. Just say it for the most part. And that's typically what I mean. So basically, I try to structure my live streams in a way where the only thing structured is people are saying what's on their mind when it's on their mind and how they feel about it for all the typical purposes. And that's typically how it works. I just want people in my live stream that's going to say what's on their mind, say how they feel, and let it all out basically. And then on top of that, I don't. I like to not have agreeable people in my live stream as much as humanly possible. I believe the only person that's the most agreeable person in my live stream, and it's probably at about like 96%, is MGTOWN to win. Me and him probably agree 96 to 97% of the time for the most part. And this is typically why I don't always drag him into my live stream. One of the main two reasons why I don't drag him into my live stream all the time because he's more agreeable. And only time he disagrees is when he's trying to bring logic into something that has no logic in the first damn place. Like when we talk about like what feminists say or how feminists talk or their various talking points, he tends to be that's the only time he tends to disagree because he's trying to bring logic into something or try to apply logic to something or someone who actually doesn't have logic in the first damn place. And that's typically like the only time you'll ever hear me and MGTOWN to win ever disagree on something is when he's trying to apply logic to somebody or something that didn't have logic in the first damn place or was being illogical for the most part. And that's typically how that works. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like I have to continuously keep on telling him like you're trying to apply logic to something or a topic that was very illogical in the first daggone place. So I'm gonna just need you to chill out. But yeah, it's typically that like that. And another aspect of my live streams that you'll notice is when we actually start going in, everybody's always on opposing sides or in the middle, or they're pretty much scattered all over the place for the most part when it comes to a lot of the topics that we talk about. Like you'll have like everybody's always going to be disagreeable on the opposite side of the aisle when it comes to certain things for the most part, and it's typically how that works. And what a lot of people don't realize is when we actually talk and speak to each other, a lot of the arguments start off with me being on one side and trying to get everybody to it. Like people think I'm trying to get everybody on my page or trying to get everybody to agree with me, when in fact I'm merely trying to get you on the same page as me so I can actually explain this a lot better. So if I can get you on the same page as me, I don't care about being right. I just care that we're all on the same page so I can actually continue this conversation. It can move pretty fluid. Is all I really care about for the most part. But people always see, well, see, you're agreeing with Tico. No, they're not agreeing with Tico. I'm just merely trying to get them on the same page so I can actually explain this better. Because if they're on opposite pages, if everybody's on the opposite page or different pages, it's going to be very hard to explain something to somebody. That's like trying to explain, page 100 to somebody that's on page 2, or page 53 to somebody that's on page 49. It's just basically they're not on the same page. We're at total ends of the story. So now I got to get everybody on the same. I got to get everybody up to speed, get everybody on the same page, and then go on from there. For the most part, it's typically how it works. And that's usually how my live stream works. And what I noticed with live streams like that is they don't necessarily get the highest views, or they don't always get the views that they deserve, because people, I guess, because they make you think more, and they make you have to think more instead of like being a mindless drone for the most part. And typically how live streams like that work, or they can be very unorthodox and very unorganized for the most part, and they seem like they're very unorganized or very, very unorthodox, which is actually pretty fun to have a live stream that's very unorthodox. It's organized. It's like my live streams, I try to set them in a way where it's like controlled chaos is a good example of that. So it's like chaos, but control in a controlled environment for the most part, which is typically how it works. Because if you've ever noticed with a lot of my live streams, it's like everybody has different views on different things. Even the people that I've been rolling with for the longest time have different views. Like a good example of that, one of the most disagreeable people on my live stream would probably be Real Pill Dusty. Is a good example of somebody that's a very disagreeable person with me. And like, even when you hear him say, damn it, you right, Tico, you right, DarkSkinTico. And it's typically because I got him to the same page as me. It's not the fact that he actually 100% agrees with me or 100% rides with me. It's because I got him to the same page so I can actually explain the whole entire situation for the most part. And that's typically what it is. But he tends to usually ride at about like 70 to 80% chance of disagreeing with me for the most part. Double I is another one. He'd be tied with him on disagreeing with me, because if you ever notice, me and Double I will talk and we'll disagree on a lot of shit. Matter of fact, me and Double I disagree on a lot more shit than me and Dusty disagree on for the most part, which is actually pretty shocking. But the sad part about that, the reason why I actually put them at equal, because the things that Double I agree with me on, he can understand where I'm coming from for the most part. But it's one of those things where like I still disagree, but I understand where you're coming from, but I still disagree. Or it's one of those things where we'll just disagree to disagree. We'll just agree to disagree. I mean, for the most part, it's typically how it works. And the sad part about that is I actually enjoy that in those two, because they disagree. They're more likely to disagree with me on something than everybody else is. Then you have Baron Yam, which is a 50% chance of disagreeing with me, which is actually pretty funny. I actually enjoy him in my live streams because he's a nice counterbalance to me, especially when we do the Baron and Sadis live streams. He's a very good counterbalance to me, um, which is actually very nice. But I typically pick him for the. I typically pick him more for the fact that it's a 50-50 shot if we actually disagree, um, and it makes it more fluid for the most part. And that's typically why I pick him for the Baron and Sadis show, or pick for the Baron and Sadis show, for the fact that like it seems to be more uniformal, and more people will watch it for the fact that it's Baron and Sadist. And I know that I still need that thing that appears to be an echo chamber on my channel, when in fact it's really not an echo chamber on my channel, which is actually pretty funny. And that's typically how it works. But something I've actually noticed, like I said in the beginning of the video, is what I've noticed is that there's a lot of people who watch, who will sit there and say my podcast or my live streams are echo chambers, when in fact they're not. When in fact, if you actually go watch the people that they actually watch and who they watch, they're actually more echo chambery than mine's would ever be, for the most part. Because at the end of the day, people will disagree. People on minds will always disagree with each other. I mean, we can always come to the same page, but after we get off that same page, some of us go back to page 100, some of us go back to page 2, some of us go back to page 43, some of us go back to page 1,000, some of us on page 500. We basically just go back to our own little pages for the most part, but we find a common page where we can actually stand on, so we can actually move it forward for the most part. It's typically how it works. And that's basically what I want my live streams to be for the most part. I don't want them to be all echoey chambery. And that's the reason why I don't invite a lot of people on the show, because I know if I invite them on the show, it's going to be hella echo chambery. This is one of the many reasons why I don't always invite MGTOW to win on the podcast or the shows, because I know that we're going to be very agreeable, and I don't want it to seem like it's an echo chamber, because we're pretty agreeable people. Because we pretty much agree about like 96 to 97% of the times, if not sometimes 98 to 99% of the times on it, pretty much everything. Like I said, the only time when we're both disagree, when he's disagreeable with me, is when like he's trying to apply logic to something that's illogical, or apply logic to something that had no logic in the first damn place. It's like the only time we're disagreeable. But at the end of the day, those don't really come up as often as everybody. Those don't really come up too often, so it makes for a very agreeable group. It makes for a very agreeable dynamic duo for the most part when it comes to me and Wen. This is one of the reasons why I don't really always invite them on a podcast or on a show, because I don't want everybody saying, well, it's an echo chamber. Well, it's not. The fact of the matter is you're missing it. And I invite them on there. I usually invite them on there when I have like a good example is dragging Wen in the shit is usually when like so I have Red Pill Dusty and Psyche Soap is a good way to actually drag Wind into shit. That way there's crazy shit going on all over the place. And Wind's sitting there looking like, what the fuck? Basically. And it's typically how I tend to operate when it comes to stuff like that. And it's like he's usually good for those types of things for the most part, because he's caught off guard and the shit is always evolving and changing and shit like that. And it's like, the fuck did I walk into? And that's typically what I like to do to Win sometimes when I drag him into my live streams. Have him on his toes, like, what the fuck is going on? What the hell, Tico? But yeah, it's just stuff like that that just blows my mind when I actually hear people say that, and it's like I laugh about it because, like, at the end of the day, it's like furthest from the truth. Because, like I said, me and Red Pill Dusty disagrees about like 70 to 80% of the time. Me and Double I disagree about, I would say about 72 to 83% of the time. Me and Double I disagree on shit. Me and MGTOW and Win pretty much agree on like 97% of. Me and MGTOW and Win pretty much agree 97% of the times, and this is why I don't always invite them on to the shows or podcasts for that reason, because I don't want it to sound like an echo chamber. Me and Baron Yam probably agree 50-50. What's up, Gruda Ghost? Me and Baron Yam agree like 50% of the time for the most part on things. And this is why I'm more likely to actually work with them. And this is why I actually started the whole entire Baron and Sadist thing, because depending on the topic, it could go either way. Depending on how we feel that day for the most part, we can end up on opposite sides of the topic, or we can agree. It's like one of those things where it's like, you want to find out, you want to take this journey with us to figure out if we're going to agree or not for the most part. And it typically always lands 50-50 when it comes down to it. When me and Baron and Sadist shows. And this is why I do the Baron and Sadist show, for that reason, because I know we're going to be a disagreeable pair for the most part. And it makes it more interesting, and it gives it a better dynamic for the most part. And I would like to do more shows with Double I, but Double I acts like nobody wants to hear his voice and he's too scared to come on because that would be a fun show. I and Sadis. Because we disagree on a lot of shit. And the sad part about that is you really don't get to see him disagreeing with me too much because he's usually always like off to the side or in the background and he doesn't really say too much. But I would like to do a show where like an I and Sadis where it's just me and Double I, where we just go at it basically, or we just talk about various things and you can actually see how much we actually disagree or how diametrically different we are when it comes to different things for the most part. It don't matter what the topic is, we're always going to have something to disagree on when it comes to certain topics. And this is typically why I always do shows like that for the most part because it's kind of fun doing it it's kind of fun doing it that way. And that's typically how it works. And I like Psyche Soap for the fact that he's very opinionative, but he's a go with the flow, very unorthodox, very spontaneous person for the most part. And this is typically what I like about Psyche Soap in the live streams with us because it it doesn't matter what's going on. He's always going to be Psyche Soap, and you never know what to expect from him for the most part, which actually makes it really funny and fun because you may get silly Psyche Soap or you might get serious Psyche Soap. You might get a mixture of all the above for the most part. And it makes for a great podcast because like when he's cutting up is like the funniest shit in the world. It's just the funniest shit in the world. And it makes for a great podcast when he's actually around. Um the same goes for True Sherm. Actually, me and True Sherm are probably about 65% agreeable on things. Usually those things are usually comes down to like medical and um like the bullshit that the government usually pulls and shit like that. And those tend to be the things that we mainly disagree on. I mean, mainly agree on. I mean, for the most part. And like, I like True Sherm because this is the reason why I actually have the Relentless show is because you never know what you're going to get with True Sherm, and it all depends on his mood and his mood that day and how he feels that day, how shit's going to unfold, and it makes for a very good podcast. Even when people think it's bad, it actually makes for a very good podcast. And people are like, "Well, I don't know what's going on here," and it makes for a very good podcast because it's all about it's basically even though he'll say it's all about the other people, it actually revolves around him. The podcast is set up to revolve around him, and this is typically why I pull the various people for the podcast to actually make it work because I know I usually get like a good consensus of what True Charm is going, what True Charm is, what his mindset is, and before we even start. And I usually start. I'll pull like basic people for the most part. Like I'll go and get like Psyche Soap, Mr. Forma, originally off the bat. They're always like the first people I go get. Um, but based on how how I perceive True Sherm when he gets in, like the pre-show before we go live, I typically pull people based on his mood or like how I perceive him at the moment for the most part. And I'll typically like pull like Make Talon to Win would be like a good one depending on which way his mood is going. And Yam is another one. And Psyche, not Psyche, well, obviously Psyche said he's like one of the first two people on the list. Then also would have Double I if he's available at the time to actually come in. And Red Pill Dusty, which is usually a pretty good one. He's a pretty much a. I picked Red Pill Dusty for two reasons in a lot of these live streams when we have Red Pill Dusty in because believe it or not, Red Pill Dusty is like a nice counterbalance to um Psyche Soap for the most part. So Red Pill Dusty is like, don't get me wrong, they're both like they have similar personalities, and they will say some stuff that's either off the wall or crazy or funny. But the sad part about that, even if they say the shit, it's both crazy off the wall and funny at the same damn time. And like they're very spontaneous, and they say what's on their mind at the time when it actually comes down to it, which actually makes for a very good dynamic for the most part. And another reason why I picked them is because they're so diametrically different, but they have similar traits for the most part. Like one would say smack a bitch, whereas like he sub goes, you know, fuck that bitch, and it's typically what it is when it comes down to the live streams, you know. It's typically what it is. And like I usually pick people that like diametrically are different but the same. But it seemed like everything meshes perfectly for the fact that everybody's picked based on everybody's personality for the streams for the most part. And that's typically how I pick it, depending on how whatever's going on. But usually, if Yam is in, 9 times out of 10, I try to bring Psyche Soap in there because those two together have a good dynamic for the most part. If you've ever listened to them to like just go on about simple shit or just go on period, them two are like very funny together. I like if I could get them all together, I would like to do a show with him, Red Pill Dusty, and Psyche Soap, and just have those three just going at it, just have at it, like for the whole entire live stream, because those three actually have a really really good dynamic, and they fit each other quite perfectly for the most part. And I think that would make for a very good show or a good, very good segment on the show, for all intents and purposes, for that reason, because the Psyche Soap Yam dynamic is actually very funny and fun, but it can be very serious, but it's usually very funny and fun. And then you also got the Red Pill Dusty Psyche Soap dynamic, which they're diametrically opposite but similar up the middle for the most part, but they're diametrically opposite on how they think and how they do things and how they carry themselves, which actually makes for a very fun podcast for in all technicality. I mean, ugh. But yeah, that's typically how I pick people for the live streams. That's typically how I run with people for the various live streams. Another good person that's actually very good for a live stream that I usually pick them because they'll keep it very serious, and the and it won't get too outlandish with them in there. Is Pepe, free agent Pepe is a good person, or AK Pence Rule for the most part is actually a very good person to have in a live stream. When I have a bunch of people in there just acting a fool, he usually helps me keep it more organized or more as formal as it humanly possibly could be with the diametrically opposing people or the hot mess people that I collected together to be in a stream. And typically I pick him for that reason, because if it gets out of control, and like if I know if he's in there, he can help me pretty much rein everybody in and keep it serious and keep it moving for the most part. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't mind it being like out of control, and I don't mind it being OC as fuck out half the time. When I mean OC is out of control as hell, but sometimes you got to rein it in because the shit gets like a little out of hand. You're sitting there looking like, I don't know what the hell this devolved into, and just shit like that for the most part. And I actually enjoy the people that I actually work with on my live streams and podcasts for that reason, because they all bring their own little personality and a glimpse of themselves to the live stream. And I don't knock them for it, and I enjoy having them on the live streams for the most part. Another good person to have on the live stream is me and Mr. Forma. Mr. Forma is a good person to always have on the live stream for the fact that, I mean, he can get funny, but for the most part, he's typically mostly always serious, which actually makes for a nice little, you know, a person to keep it moving forward while being silly, but keep it moving forward for the most part. And it's typically what it is. Like all the rest of the people, they'll be happy to just act a straight fool for hours on end, which is actually pretty fun. And that's typically what I like about my live streams for that reason, because we ain't got no problem with acting a fool and showing our asses and shit like that. I mean, not literally showing our asses. We're not mooning nobody. But typically how it works is we have a good dynamic for the fact that we understand each other to a certain extent, and we're able to make it work for the most part, despite the fact that we're all diametrically different while acting a straight fool altogether for the most part. And that's one thing I can say about my live streams, and when it comes to my podcast and live stream, for that fact is picking these people makes it more interesting. It adds another layer to everybody else in the live stream for the most part, and it makes everybody more complex and think a bit differently. And like you'll hear something to the extent when I always talk about when Double I says it changed dynamics. The reason why I pick these people so I can continuously change the dynamics, because there's going to be certain topics that we're not always going to agree on, and it's going to strike a chord with a certain person in the stream where you know that's typically how it works. I want it to be more authentic, and I want it to be almost like a hot take type thing. When somebody says something, it might be offensive to one person, but it's like they kind of sort of roll with the punches, even if it's offensive to them. And if it is offensive, like typically I'd say, look, if somebody has a problem with something that somebody says, instead of like fighting about it, beefing about it, and making like 9 videos on it or making a diss track on it on YouTube, how about we just talk it out and we'll try to like avoid those topics that are very, very sensitive to certain people. But like as of late and as of yet, nobody's really been bothered by shit that go on live streams. I mean, I think the most that happened was I think the only time that when something actually went like diametrically wrong was when somebody was telling me that, okay, it's my live stream, but I feel like everybody else is running away with it. I go, it's your live stream, you're in charge of it. I can only rein people in if you let me know that this is not the direction you want to take it. And that's typically what it is for the most part. Like I can only do what you allow to let happen for the most part because it's your live stream. You're the coach, you're the quarterback. So let me know when shit gets out of hand so I can rein everybody in with you for the most part. But at the end of the day, it's your live stream. So you can rein everybody in if you want to. I'll just back you up because it's your live stream. They can be everybody else on the panel can be mad about it, but at the end of the day, it's still your live stream. Even though it's on my channel, it's your live stream. So I'm going to back you no matter what because it's your live stream. And that's typically what it is. And that's typically how I feel about a lot of the stuff and a lot of the people on my channel for the most part when it comes to a live stream. It's like, well, if this is how you feel, let me know. And next time say something and I'll back you 100% on the shit. Because at the end of the day, I want you to be comfortable with your show, typically. And just stuff along the lines of that. Yeah, that's about it. But yeah, I tend to, yeah, like I said, I tend to pick people based on their personalities and how I can help it move forward and keep it more efficient for the most part, or you know, keep it so it's just straight a hot mess or OC all the damn time. It's typically based on the mood of the people in the live stream when they come in for the most part. Sometimes we're going to come in acting a fool. Sometimes we're going to come in being savage. Sometimes we're going to come in just being serious. But typically, it's all about everybody's mood that day for the most part. It's typically how it works. And I like that dynamic in the live streams. And it makes for a very interesting, different, or diametrically opposing live streams, even though the same people are involved in like all the live streams. It makes for a very interesting live stream and it makes for a very diametrically different live stream because no two live streams are the same, no matter how you cut it or what you do with it for the most part, which makes it pretty fun. And that's typically all I wanted to be is fun. Because I always say, people will say, we'll start off with people will say, what's the topic, Tico? And I say, just have fun with it. Like we're acting like bros sitting at the bar on a Saturday or Friday night, just drinking beer. It's typically the feel that I want for my live streams. And it's typically all I really want. I wanted to feel like we're just chilling at the bar and we're drinking beers together, basically. That's pretty much the general feel of my live streams. And especially when like certain people are like leading the live streams, like True Sherm, people will come in like, what's the topic, Tico? I go, wait for True Sherm to come. He's the one bringing a topic. Or like when we do forum, what's the topic, Tico? Double Hour Yam brings that topic for the most part. And that's typically how it works. If there's a topic, we'll run with the topic. Because when we get topics, what a lot of people don't realize is it's usually I try to keep it in a way where it's like a hot take for the most part, or it's like literally a response, an initial response to something for the most part, because I want it to be as authentic and as funny and people to be caught off guard as much as humanly possible. Because we're going to talk about a lot of topics that a lot of people aren't particularly comfortable with, and we're going to talk about a lot of topics that people are comfortable with. And when it comes down to it, I want it to be an authentic response or reaction to the damn thing. So I typically tend to tell those people that are in charge of those things to keep it to themselves. That way we can actually respond naturally to the shit. So like I never really know, especially when it's forum, I never really know the topic until like Double I or Yam show up for the topic for the most part. The same goes for the True Relentless or True Tuesdays Relentless. Yeah. True Sherm's Relentless, basically. I never know the topic until True Sherm actually shows up, typically. And it's typically how it works. And the same thing goes for, like, even when it comes to Bitches Ain't Shit, aka Door Kickers Inc. on this channel, I typically don't know what the topic is. I mean, I know of the topic, but I tend to not like dive into the topic so I can actually respond and actually be a natural response to what we're doing. And that's typically how it works. Like, everybody's always caught off guard on in the live stream. What's the topic? You're going to find out. Ding! Like, who's all coming to? And the sad part about that is the same thing goes for like the streams too. Like, hardly anybody know who's actually coming to the stream. I have an idea who's coming to the stream, but even the people on the panel don't even know who's coming. And that's typically how I like to keep it. So they're caught off guard. And it's one of those things where it's like, what just happened there? Like, out of nowhere, this person showed up. And it's typically what it is. And that's typically how I like to keep it on my channel. That way I keep it more interesting. And the people coming in and out, like, kind of sort of change the dynamic of the whole entire podcast or show, or the live stream for that reason, because 9 times out of 10, we're all going to disagree on shit. We're all going to fight over shit. We're all going to argue about shit. We're going to get agitated about shit. And that's what I enjoy about it. We're not agitated enough to, like, want to sit down and do a raddowner.com on each other, but we're agitated enough to go, I can see where you're coming from, and we can agree to disagree for the most part. And that's typically all I really wanted in these podcasts or live streams, typically, because I just want I want the people in the live stream who's actually on the panel to be as shocked as the people who are actually watching the panel. So I tend to keep information until last minute for the most part. That way it could be a natural reaction to, like, the shit going on. And that's typically how it works. Like, every time we do a live stream, we're literally going in blind for the most part. Or we're going in not knowing, or one person knows what the topic is and the rest of us don't know what the topic is. Or we literally half the time just freestyle it. So nobody actually knows what the topic is. So now we're just reacting naturally to every topic that comes up for the most part. It's typically how it usually works. And I tend to like those ones, and people tend to like those live streams too, when we just come in with no topic at all and we just run with it. But typically, I would say about 98 to 99% of the live streams and that I do with a lot of people on my channel, or like literally last minute topics. We literally don't know what the topic is going to be until that person shows up that has a topic. Because usually I usually dish out tasks for different things. Like, good example of that's forum. If we're doing a forum, 9 times out of 10, it's Yam and it's or Double I's job to come up with the topic. Relentless is True Sherm. True Sherm leads the show, so those topics can go any way, shape, or form he wants them to go for the most part. The same with Door Kicker Inc. Even though it's a news story, I tend to keep it, like, from everybody so they can actually react naturally to the shit. And the same goes for the Duzang's Savages. Duzang's the one that actually comes up with the topics, and we all respond. What's up, Blind Assassin? I plan on doing one tonight. Table flip. You're always welcome. I'll send it to you in I'll send you the link in Discord if you come, Blind Assassin. I always send the links to Discord unless the person's not in Discord, then I'll send it through email or Facebook. Basically, is usually how I'll send it. Yeah, that's typically how I send it for the most part. But it's definitely going to be one tonight, later on today for the most part. So it's going to be a table flip. But typically that's how it works. And I like to keep it that interesting for that reason, because I don't want people to seem like they're mindless drones in a live stream. I want it to be more authentic. I want them to react and be shocked and awed for the most part at the shit that we're saying, and it's the shit that's coming out of our mouths. And this is typically why I always say keep it free flowing and free running for the most part. It's basically, because I try to use it as almost like a mental exercise for people. I use it as a mental exercise for people to adapt and be able to actually come and be shocked and awed and shit like that. So I can get a natural, it's basically like shock value, basically, for certain people that walk into it and they don't know what's going on and they walk into it like, what the fuck? So it's one of them things where, like, you got to be mentally mentally agile to walk into, because it's not always going to be the same topic. Even when we come up with a topic at the beginning, a topic at the beginning, it's never going to stay on that topic, and it's going to evolve into something else for the most part, and that's typically what I like about it. So it's very hard to be an echo chamber when the live streams don't really have a topic in the first damn place, or I don't even know what the topic's going to be in the first damn place. And that's typically like how I like to keep it. I like to actually respond to shit naturally for the most part. It's almost like you opening up that gift for the first time, or hearing something for the first time for the most part. Even when we have articles, I tend to like try to avoid reading them or hearing about them so we can keep a natural response, keep everybody naturally responding to shit for the most part. Is typically how it works. But yeah, my live streams aren't echo chambers for that reason, because I have so many diametrically opposing people for the most part. I mean, the most you'll get out of the most you can actually say for an echo chamber would be like if I ever did a show with me and MGTOW to win for the most part, because we tend to be very agreeable people, because we tend to agree on like 97 to 98% of the shit that we talk about for all intents purposes. So doing a show with him one on one tends to not really work in favor, for the fact that, I mean, don't get me wrong, it could actually work, but I don't want everybody saying, well, Tico shows are echo chambers. And that's typically why I don't really work with Win too often by myself, because I don't want everybody thinking it's an echo chamber. Because we do agree on a lot of shit. We're probably like the most agreeable two in the whole entire in the whole entire panel for the most part. So I don't want everybody saying that, well, Tico has a echo chamber for live streams and shit like that, and everybody agrees. No, not everybody agrees. Even when Hammerhand joins in, he doesn't always agree. He understands where it's going, and he understands the direction I'm trying to take it, and he fits right in quite perfectly. And the neat thing about that is everybody's always invited in the live streams and podcasts. It don't matter who you are. Let it be Mr. Elite. Let it be, if it's table flip, let it be like anybody in the manosphere is always invited. If it's other lock shit, everybody and their mom's invited for the most part to no lock shit, because I would like to have different views. And no lock shit's done more as almost like a shock thing to the manosphere for the most part, a shock value thing to the manosphere, because I'll have people from different walks of life on the show for no lock shit, and that's typically how it works. And yes, I plan on bringing back no lock shit. But yeah, it's basically how it works. I basically want to be able to make it so everybody responds naturally to everybody in the live stream, and everybody's actually their actual shock and awe. Everybody on the panel is naturally shocked and awe about a live stream for that reason, and that's typically like how I like to keep it for the most part. And I try my best to keep everybody in the dark about all the aspects of the live stream for the most part. Even when I'm in the dark, half the time I'm in the dark and I don't know what's going on, especially when it's like a Duzang Savages, or when it's a True Sharms Relentless. I'm in the dark on what's going on. And I like it that way, for the fact that whatever topic he brings to the table, I can actually respond. You get my natural, authentic response to the shit for the most part. The same thing goes for like Door Kickers Inc., aka Bitches Ain't Shit. Dusty brings the article, and I try to tell him to keep it to himself, even though he wants to share it half the time. Like, dude, we got to react to this. I'm trying to react naturally to this. Like, keep it to yourself. Keep it to yourself. And it's shit like that just makes for an interesting dynamic when it comes down to it. And that's what I like about my live streams. It's literally like controlled chaos. Even when it gets out of control, we find some way to usually rein it in and keep it organized for the most part. But I've been like pretty much stepping in when it comes to certain people. When it comes to people, because I'll say, well, okay, wait, you go this person for the most part, and I usually try to keep it organized for the most part. When it gets too crazy and out of control, I usually say, well, you hang on 1 second. I want to hear from this person, because either they were too quiet or they're silent, and I just basically want to hear their opinion on the topic for the most part. It's typically how it works. And that's typically how I like to keep my live streams. I like to keep them with everybody on their toes, everybody shocked, everybody not agreeing with each other, and everybody going into it blindly at the same damn time. So it's pretty much a train wreck. an organized train wreck for the most part. Is the best way I can say it. It's like basically, yeah, it's basically an organized train wreck, and that's what I enjoy about them, and that's why I enjoy the people that actually come into the live streams because they typically bring an aspect to the live stream that's not there, or like I was saying about like Pepe. Whenever shit gets too ridiculous, I can always rely on Pepe to keep it moving forward. Free agent Pepe, aka Pence rule, to keep it moving forward for the most part. Um, and another good person I can always rely on to keep a live stream moving forward is Mr. Forma. I mean, he can be funny and silly and take it off track, but he always finds a way to basically make it progress gradually, like I want it to for the most part, and stuff like that for the most part that makes it fun. Whereas all the rest of the people, they're basically there to basically bring their personalities and silliness and fun for the most part. Like I basically try to keep it that way for that reason. I try to have like a decent amount of serious people on the panel and a decent amount of hot mess, simple as motherfuckers on the panel. That's always like just the funniest shit in the world, and it typically works. It typically works. And no matter how many times we get together, it's always going to be different. It's never going to be the same. And we try to keep it different from every single live stream. So it's like it's not the same live stream over and over again, or we're not trying to repeat the same show over and over again for the most part. But like even if we bring up the same, rehash a topic, usually we rehash a topic for the fact that if something new came up on that topic, or we're talking about something brand new on the topic, or something came up in the news where we try to talk about it for the most part. And that's the only time we ever really rehash old topics for the most part. If something came up, or we're talking about something crazy or outlandish about something for the most part, it's typically how it works. But yeah, I don't drug this on long enough. Y'all have a good one. Be blessed. And see y'all for table flip later. Peace.